My name is Geenen. I'm an associate professor at the University of Antwerp in Belgium, and I am the director of the Centre d'Expertise en Gestion Minière. That's a research center based at the Université Catholique de Bukavu in the city of Bukavu in eastern DR Congo. Cegemi is a research center that gathers about 40 researchers covering different domains. The Cegemi research over the previous years has always privileged a very empirical research based on field research and long-term engagement with mining communities in different parts of South Kivu.
My name is Nkuba. I have been conducting research on mercury for a number of years, but aside from mercury, I look at all the other environmental and health risks that artisanal mining, especially artisanal gold mining, can represent and represents for mining communities in Congo. And to have a grasp of the problem, it's good to understand the activity itself. So we have like three separate parts. The first one, miners have to extract the ore. So during the extraction, you have a lot of risk, like sometimes the mine collapse. People have to work underground where there can be too much water, and then when you try to get the water out, you don't have enough oxygen because you have smoke that can come in, and many people die by asphyxiation because of that. So just the fact of extracting the ore underground causes so many deaths to miners, and also like it's not good for the general ecosystem where you have to throw all that ground. The second point is when you have to process, like going from the ore and getting the mineral. And at this phase, you usually have to use mercury. If you don't use mercury, maybe use cyanide, which is nearly as toxic both to human and to other species. If you go and concentrate just by gravity, which is encouraged, but you're going to throw all the things that is not gold somewhere, usually in the river, and this creates additional environmental problem, health problem to the communities. If you go to the last phase, which is the trade within the area, traders have to always clean their gold to be sure it's good enough, and one of the key products is nitric acid, and this is a very corrosive and very dangerous for whoever breathes it, but that's the only way they can be sure they clean enough to have good quality ore. So when you look at all this is like a very dangerous and very unhealthy type of activity. The problem is that none of the people who benefit from this activity have created a health system that can support these workers, that can support their community and the people who have to live around this type of activity. So you have in most mines, either in Congo or in other countries, people who have no health coverage. Their hospitals are under-equipped, and with all that, you have so many people dying from their job as miners, and it's such a common case, very unreported, and so many people try to look away rather than looking really deep into it.
Some of the observations we have made are really that there is often a disconnect between the realities and the needs that you find on the very local level and the realities and the concerns that are expressed at the international level. So I'd like to share with you some findings about labor and informality. Almost 100% of gold mining in DRC is still informal, which means that this is carried out in zones that are not legally, where there are no legal permits to mine, and also in conditions that are not regulated by the state and by the labor legislation that's in place. So mining is predominantly informal. Although the framework and the mining code in the DRC provides for artisanal and small-scale mining to happen under legal conditions, but that is only in the case that an artisanal mining zone has been created, and that within this artisanal mining zone, a mining cooperative has applied for a permit. And then all the miners within this space have to become members of the cooperative. Now that's the theory, that's what's on paper. But what we see in practice is that many artisanal and small-scale miners are working in spaces that are not legally attributed to them, sometimes even inside industrial mining concessions or inside protected areas. The problem is that much of the territory in DR Congo is already so carved up, mainly with industrial mining concessions, that there are just not many spaces left for artisanal miners to legally carry out their activities. And then the legal requirement to group into cooperatives, which was declared in 2011, is also experienced by the miners as an imposition. Some of the cooperatives are considered to be extractive institutions demanding contributions from the miners rather than providing them with technical or material support. So this informal system is actually beneficial to certain actors. The more powerful actors benefit from the fact that there is this flexible labor force available, that they do not have to adhere to labor regulation and environmental regulation. So if we extrapolate this to the global level, we can actually say that the informality of artisanal and small-scale gold mining is very useful to the global gold production system. And this is also what we argued in a book last year. Another problem is that is the state control. So in many of these mining sites, you do find services, governmental services. For instance, the SAIMAPE, which is a service that has to assist small-scale miners. But the problem there is that they're often under-equipped. They don't have the financial means, they don't have the material means, they don't have the human resources to be able to properly carry out their tasks.
One of the solutions that have been considered, especially when you look at the mercury problem, nearly 10 years ago, the Minamata Convention have been signed by a number of countries. The whole idea is to reduce the risk from mercury. But of course, while trying to reduce, you look at other factors like formalization of the sector, health, and many other factors. And these have been done in very many countries, but it's not so easy to put in place because one of the key elements is to bring technologies that can allow miners to produce without polluting so much. So this is a quite difficult thing to do because not only you have to develop scientifically a technology which really does not impact the environment, but this technology has to be applicable to miners. It has to small-scale miners, a person without so much capital, with very limited training and so on. You need something very simple that is easy to do, but also that is profitable for him, because if he cannot increase his income, if he's going to have to bear the cost of this environmental protection, definitely in an informal setup, he's not going to do that. So combining these three parameters for finding a technical solution is something that has nearly been failing worldwide. So we need to come with solutions that go beyond the technicity, where we involve a bit more, and one of the things is who are the downstream actors who benefit from this technology, how much of their percentage of profit can be injected towards making it safe, because just thinking on bringing cleaner technologies and suddenly it will solve the problem, this is something that has not yet been successful.
Another issue is the heterogeneity in the labor force, and that's something really, really important to take into account in formalization policies. When we talk about formalization, we often talk about miners as if they were a homogeneous group of workers, and that's not at all the case. So what we are seeing is that people do very different tasks. People are involved in the extraction, for instance, going underground, but other people are working as transporters. A lot of women working in stone washing and stone picking. People are doing manual grinding. So there are so many different tasks, and some of these tasks are actually better remunerated than others. Some people are carrying out very specialized tasks, such as the construction of the wooden supports inside the tunnels. So these are specialists who are generally better remunerated and according to different remuneration systems. And so this differentiation in the workforce also shows in the working conditions. And this is really something that we need to take into account in formalization policies, because formalization tends to benefit the ones who are already better remunerated, more stable, who do have the necessary skills to upgrade, the pit managers who do have the means to invest in new technologies. And so what we often see is that the most vulnerable populations, notably women for instance, are being left out from this process. And so formalization for them actually results in more exclusion instead of more inclusion. So if we acknowledge that these are the real needs on the ground, health and safety, decent working conditions and social protection mechanisms, then we do need to target more of our interventions in these domains. So far, many of the interventions have been on the responsible sourcing and the traceability, which is only a very small part, I think, of what the region needs in terms of development, in terms of well-being of the mining communities. So I would really like to call upon international actors and downstream companies and the jewelry industry to look at bottom-up initiatives, starting from the mining communities themselves, and do some interventions that can address some of these challenges to improve the lives for the people there and for their environment.
So, to solve this problem, it doesn't have to start very large with another global program like Minamata, but something little and localized can also be done. So at our research center, Cegemi, we have been trying to do something, and this went into training of cooperatives towards different techniques, giving them financial capabilities to better manage, and then they have a bit more room into choices they can make. But also we go to individual miners and we try to teach them a way to work differently from what they've been doing, try to give them as little as it's possible some equipment, some protective equipment. And our core belief is like, if one single life can be saved by no matter the amount of effort, if a group of people can be okay, if their life expectancy can be prolonged because we took them away from the risk or reduce the risk, it's still worth it. So we can just encourage whoever else think they can work somewhere in X or Y mine, try to improve. And these actions really matter to these communities, because usually everybody is just about good reputation, but there is very little that is currently being done to change the well-being of the community. Giving more education, giving better, helping a hospital somewhere in a mine, helping a school, helping whichever can be done that can really contribute to improving the livelihood of these people is really worth it.
So if we acknowledge that these are the real needs on the ground, health and safety, decent working conditions and social protection mechanisms, then we do need to target more of our interventions in these domains. So far, many of the interventions have been on the responsible sourcing and the traceability, which is only a very small part, I think, of what the region needs in terms of development, in terms of well-being of the mining communities. So I would really like to call upon international actors and downstream companies and the jewelry industry to look at bottom-up initiatives, starting from the mining communities themselves, and do some interventions that can address some of these challenges to improve the lives for the people there and for their environment.